6:30. We're probably going to get to the end of Romans chapter 8, not this week, but the next week, and then we're going to launch into kind of a video-driven series. It goes super deep, going to make your brain explode. It'll be fantastic. So that's about all I got to talk to you about. Remember, we've got a mission trip. We're going to go serve people, love on people, take care of people. Last day of July through most of the first week of August, it's going to be about $200. There's going to be an application available the end of this month. So if you're thinking, hey, I'd like to go be really great and nice to people and let them know that Jesus loves them and that I love them, and just be thinking about it. And when I put out the application, grab one, fill it out. Really, the only other stipulation other than filling out the application is that you have to be here on a regular basis. Because if I have learned one thing in my years of youth ministry, it's that you do not take a student you do not know well on a trip, because they will not listen to a thing you say. So, if you're not here on a regular basis, start coming if you want to go on this trip. Otherwise, it's not even going to be an option for you. Okay? So, as we move into this third week of the canceled series, I gotta ask you a question. Have you ever heard the term the green-eyed monster? Has anybody ever heard that? Do you know what that means? Anybody other than Jake? I'm not going to let Jake answer. Does anybody know what the green-eyed monster means?
Okay. I thought you were already on my hand. Oh. Henry.
Yes. Wow. You just ruined the whole first part of my lesson. I didn't think anybody was going to know. Just kidding. The green-eyed monster refers to jealousy and envy. It's not a literal monster. It's like something that wells up inside of you and starts eating at who you are and the people around you, because it just grows and grows out of control, and it's ugly and mean and stinky and all that good stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but before we talk more about the green-eyed monster and where the whole concept came from, and dive a little deeper into what the green-eyed monster means, I need a little bit of help. I want us all to visualize this green-eyed monster. Okay, so I need some volunteers, and I promise I'm not going to make you wander around making sheep and goat noises this week, because that was just something else last week. I need some volunteers. Who wants to help me out tonight? Okay, Riv, come on up. Mateo, come on up. I need some. Malachi, come on. I would like to have 3 more volunteers if any of y'all are brave enough to. Yeah, you want to come up? Hannah, you got to come up too.
No.
Yeah. Hey, you 3 can tag team it. You can be on a team because I need teams of 3. So, why don't you guys stand right here? And you guys stand right. This works perfect. We've got this. This is great, man. I can't believe I actually got 6 volunteers after some of the things I've made you people do over the years. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Each team is going to have 2 minutes to use the contents of this bucket to make one of your team members look like a green monster. So we've got some foam paper, we've got lace, we've got ribbon. There's a Sharpie in there, there's scissors if you want to cut up this foam paper and the other stuff. And then there are clothespins for you to fasten everything on. So who's going to be the monster on this team? Who's going to get decorated as a monster? Are you just pointing at Rib because there's less ground to cover since he's 2 feet taller than the others? Okay. Oh yeah. Man, first time guest has already been decked out as a monster. What do we do with that? Okay, so here in just a second, this is probably the biggest mistake I'm going to make all night, but I told Alex that he could pick some music, and as y'all are decorating your monsters, Alex and Nehemiah are going to play some music. You're going to have 2 minutes to do whatever you can with the bucket and all of its contents to turn your human into a monster, okay? So here we go. 3, 2, 1, hit it. Discovery Plus, and now every time there's a timer, I'm like, I gotta go get the meat! Oh, fancy. The clothespin gets stuck in her hair, and you have to take a weed eater to cut it out. I remember as a child one time, you know, you see on movies and TV shows and stuff, people always stick clothespins on their nose when something stinks. That hurts really badly. So don't do that. Do not stick the clothespin on Rivion's nose. Just go try. You have 1 minute left. Oh, she looks like a candy cane. I don't even know what's happening. She's not a prisoner. You've got 40 seconds. You better do something because there's nothing on you. 30 seconds. Time is up. Time, wow. Scissors just went flying. Okay, turn off this ridiculous music. Do we know what they're saying? Okay, it's probably better that way. So the plan was to have y'all vote on who's the best. But I don't think there's really a competition. Rivion has a couple cucumbers over his eyes. That's about the extent of it. On the other hand, Lily looks like a member of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles who got hit in the face with a frying pan. So, congratulations, girls. You win. Before you leave tonight, stop by the cafe and you can have a free food and drink item, whatever you want. You don't have to pay for it. Cool?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing whatever you did. Oh my. I'm glad we're not. Are we recording this? This would be a really awkward way to have our first death at the escape because we've done a lot weirder stuff than this. Were any of you guys here the night that I busted out a couple of like power tool orbital sanders?
I was the person using that.
That was intense.
And I did.
We had a race to see who could sand down a board the fastest. And Steven's up here with like a sander, like going to town on this real rough board, and then I made him like lick the board when it was over, and it was just a mess. Thank you so much for whatever just happened. Okay, so thank you volunteers. Girls get free stuff. Steven, make sure they get their free stuff. Or you could try to charge them and then you can just pocket the money because
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea, actually.
your car keeps breaking down, so we got to do something for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that green-eyed monster refers to envy, jealousy, because Abby spoiled it for us. But do you know where the term came from? Anybody have any ideas? I didn't know this. It actually came from a Shakespeare play. And I know you're thinking, whoa, Eric, you didn't know that? You seem like the Shakespearean type. I'm not, and I just learned this as I was prepping for this, but it came out of this old Shakespeare play. Here's the line. Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on. That's very linguistically pleasing, right? Yeah, I think so. I didn't really dig into it to figure out which one. I tried to read one Shakespeare play in high school. Not my thing at all. So the green-eyed monster, it's not a living being. It's not something that's like prowling around trying to eat people. It's a feeling, an attitude. It's an emotion. The green-eyed monster is jealousy, envy, and that green-eyed monster is the topic of tonight's conversation. So to get this thing to get this thing rolling, I want to get a clear definition of envy in our heads, okay? So this evening, when we're talking about envy, we're not really talking about the, I like your shoes, I wish I had some. Like, we're going a little deeper than that. Like, that's kind of surface level envy. Like, you got that Croc envy. Somebody comes in with their new pair of Crocs, they aren't even cracked yet, and you're like, man, I wish I had those. That's how I was feeling towards Stephen on Sunday. Brand new pair of Crocs, not a single crease in them yet. And I took one.
They're too big for you.
They were 2 sizes too big because I got baby feet. That's not really what we're talking about tonight. When we talk about envy this evening, we're talking about what happens when you stop simply wanting or wishing for something and you let it turn into something ugly. Something like frustration or anger or self-pity or hatred. Like when we're talking envy tonight, we're talking about the nasty stuff. The stuff that makes you treat people differently. The stuff that makes you feel differently towards someone else. Anybody willing to admit that you've let the green-eyed monster get the best of you from time to time? Like, raise your hand if you have ever caught yourself harboring feelings of envy towards somebody. Anybody willing to admit that? Yeah. So here's some specifics. Has anybody ever really just envied one of your friends? I have. Anybody else ever envy one of your friends? Anybody ever envy one of your siblings? Like, my mom and dad like them so much better than me. It's so obvious. Anybody envy someone on social media? Like, how did she get the wings in her makeup so pointy? Oh, I just hate her for that. That's not me. Anybody ever envy someone famous? Yeah, I envy somebody famous. I just want to know how Zac Efron is so famous and I'm not. We're the same person. Same size, same body build.
Everybody knows his name and not everybody knows his.
That's what I'm saying. Why not?
Because
I'm
we're
envious.
famous.
The green-eyed monster is alive and well in me. Or maybe right now, you're envious because you really wish that you were as attractive as I am. Like, don't worry, you're not alone. Most people feel that way. Anyway, whether you raised your hand and admitted to envying somebody or not, I think if we're being honest, we all have to confess to having felt that way towards someone at some point. So, now that we know we can all relate, I want you to give me an example of a time that you envied somebody. It doesn't have to be real deep. Like, I'm not looking for confessional grade stuff here. Just, can you think of a time that you envied somebody?
Oh, you're expecting me to talk. Right?
Yeah. What you got, Lily?
I thought my mom liked my brother more than she liked me.
Did she?
No.
Oh, okay. I was really hoping you were going to be like, yeah, but I got over it.
I always thought for like 4 years straight my grandma loved my brother more than me.
Did
And
she?
she liked to do more things than me. I think she does.
Oh, well. It happens.
I guess.
Anybody else? What?
My sister, she always got like what she wanted, and I was never like that.
Did you ever like punch her in the back of the head?
No.
Okay, good. You didn't let the green-eyed monster get out. It's just kind of living in there, right?
Stop Tyler across her face.
I can believe that 100%. Yep, Yep. Oh, that's not good. Welcome to Vandy, folks. Okay, so I'm just gonna get real with you here for a second. Like we've all had a moment, maybe a few, when we've been a little envious of someone. But today I'm gonna ask you to get a little uncomfortable because I want us to get honest about the times when we've allowed a little bit of envy to prevent us from loving others. And this is something that I've kind of struggled with, I guess kind of unknowingly, or at least I didn't name it envy, but something I've kind of dealt with throughout my life. Up until the last few years, I really struggled with just kind of a basic sense of insecurity. In middle school and high school, I was really insecure about my looks and my small group of friends. I didn't have a ton of friends. I was just kind of like a wallflower, never really stood out in the group. Even if I was doing something exceptional, it's just like everybody else got the attention and I'm kind of in the background. There's nothing wrong with that, I just felt insecure about it. In college, I was really insecure about how people perceived me as a man. Like, I was called gay on such a regular basis in middle and high school, and I wasn't, so it bothered me. That by the time that I got to college, I was afraid to enjoy anything that didn't come across as manly because I didn't want to endure the same thing in college. It's like, I have a girlfriend. Like, can you just believe that? But it's like, people were constantly making fun of me all the way through middle and high school. And by the time I got to college, I'm like, I'm just going to act as manly as possible so people don't have any ammunition to make fun of me. Of course, they still did, but it was frustrating. And that carried into my married life. I refused to get a Pinterest or admit that I do most of the design work at our house because I was afraid of getting made fun of. And it's like, eventually I got past that. I'm like, I'm married, I have a baby, I've remodeled 3 houses, I'm a youth pastor. If somebody wants to make fun of me, they're going to wind up looking stupid, not me. So I finally got past that. But when I look back, I can think of several instances where my insecurity led to envy. Like people that I probably would have gotten along with really well unknowingly became my enemies because they were better at something than me. They had more than me. They got more than me. I envied them. Like, maybe they didn't get made fun of as much as me, even though they were doing the same thing. So I, envied them, and I thought that they were some big jerk, because they aren't getting made fun of, and I am. Or, somebody had a better car, or more resources. And it's not like, I didn't come out and be like, I hate you, let's fight. That's not how I handled things. It was just kind of a passive-aggressive thing, right? Like, I didn't want to be around them. I didn't want to give them a chance. I just assumed the worst about them because I envied them. Because I wanted something that they had, their big personality, their popularity, their money, their talents, their voice, and I couldn't have it. I labeled them jerks and fakes and show-offs. And often when I'd gotten in my head that someone was a jerk, a fake, or a show-off, whether they had done anything to deserve the label or not, even if they tried to be kind to me or befriend me, I just pushed them away, ignored them, or tried to one-up them. That was real mature, right? Wrong. I always had an excuse for why I was so standoffish and weird toward the people that I envied. And I feel like most of us do, right? It's easy to make excuses for our envy. We might think, I'm not jealous, they're just a jerk. That's why I'm treating them the way I am. I'm not being judgmental. They really aren't that talented. I deserve what they have more than they do. Maybe you're right. But expressing it and holding it against somebody and allowing that green-eyed monster of envy to take root in your life and cause you to treat somebody differently, it's not okay. Whether we wish we had someone's position on a team, their TikTok views, their relationships, their shoes, their perfect family, or their full-ride scholarship, it's easy for envy to creep in and take over and cancel our joy, our contentment, and our self-worth. It might start small, but envy can grow into a monster. Its effects might not be too noticeable at first, but eventually it's going to show itself in a big, ugly way. Let me illustrate it for you this way. Let's say that you're trying out for a position on the basketball team. And as I look out over this room tonight, I know that that's probably not going to happen for most of you, but let's say that you are. And let's say that you're hoping for a starting position, and he's given the starting position to one of your friends, and you're his backup. It's not great, right? Like, you wanted to be a starter. You wanted to get noticed. You wanted to get recognized. You wanted to play every game. But it's all right. You can't always be the best at everything. You're happy for your friend. Well, when your friends ask you about it, you tell them what happened and say, it's fine. But you can't help but sneak in a comment about how that guy is just so entitled, he's so full of himself, or just lucky because your game was a little off that day. Like, have you ever done that? Like, I would have gotten a better grade than him, but okay. At practice a few weeks later, your coach gives you a high five, but spends a full minute telling that guy what a great job he's doing. What a suck up, you think? Like, man, he's not that good. Why am I not getting any of this attention? He's just getting all that attention because he's popular and his parents are rich. So he gets whatever he wants, right? And then in your first game, he makes an amazing play and the whole team celebrates. He's yelling and cheering and fist bumping your teammates. When you tell the person next to you, he's so full of himself, it's disgusting. And did you know his parents basically bought his spot on the team? This whole school is so messed up. It got real messy real quick, didn't it? It doesn't take long for envy to take root. And you don't have to have a big, glaring reason for that envy to enter your life. It could be something as simple as that student's artwork got displayed in the hallway at school and yours didn't, even though you thought yours was better. Something as simple as Mom and Dad bought my brother a $50 pair of shoes, and they took me to Walmart and got me a pair of $20 FUBU shoes. It could be as simple as this teacher made a really big deal about what a great job this student did. They got a B. But I'm pulling a 4.0 all the time. What am I, chopped liver? And those little thoughts, if you allow them to take root, they change the way that your entire life looks, right? They change the way that you treat other people, the way that you think about yourself. It doesn't take much. It escalates quickly. But that's what envy does. Something small can quickly become something big. It stops being about the thing you envied, and it becomes about the person you envy. And that's when it gets messy. Here's how Scripture talks about envy. In the book of Proverbs, it's a book filled with wise sayings. It says, anger is cruel and wrath is like a flood. So neither one of those is good, right? You don't like cruelty. Flooding is not good. But jealousy is even more dangerous. That's Psalm 27:4. Anger is cruel and wrath is like a flood, but jealousy is even more dangerous. Think back to the last time you were absolutely furious at someone. Do you remember how you felt in that moment? Like blood's boiling, ears are whenever I get really mad, my ears just turn bright red and they feel like they're on fire. So, like, I remember those moments because it feels like my head's going to explode. Do you remember a moment when you were super angry with somebody? Do you still feel that way right now? Probably not. Anger is a big emotion, but it comes and goes, right? Like, it just kind of wells up and you might explode, but then eventually you chill out, you go back to that person, you're like, probably shouldn't have said that. And even if you don't go back to the person, in your head you're like, man, I blew that out of proportions. That was not smart. Jealousy, on the other hand, keeps growing and growing. It's not like a one-time thing the majority of the time. normally it takes root, and every time you see that person, it's like, man, it's just eating at you. It's making you angry just to be in their presence. You can't stand to be around them. And as it grows, it harms us, and it harms our relationship with other people. In the Bible, we find a story about a time when envy slowly destroyed a guy named King Saul. Saul was the king of Israel, but he had a problem. Because Saul had been disobedient to God as king, God rejected Saul, and he chose a young shepherd boy named David to be the next king of Israel. And Saul knew that God wasn't happy with him. Saul knew that God had already tapped somebody else to be the next king, but he didn't really know who it was yet. So things get kind of awkward. See, when Saul first encountered David, he was impressed. David played music for him. He defeated a terrifying giant on Saul's behalf, saving like the entire nation that Saul was the king of. And maybe you've heard the story of David and Goliath. Like Goliath was this giant. He had the entire army of Israel like trembling in fear for weeks on end. And this little shepherd boy, probably like my size, okay, let's be real, probably bigger than me, comes to the battlefield, and he's like, what's going on here? Like, you're God's army, and you're letting this one giant stand between you and victory? And David's like, give me a slingshot, give me some stones, let me take the guy down. And he does. And Saul's army wins the battle. And Saul's like, wow, dude, this David guy, he's something else. I want him to be in my court. I want him to fight for my army. And so things progress, and David kind of moves up the ranks, and all of a sudden, he's got a place in the king's court. And he's held in high regards. He winds up becoming best friends with King Saul's son, Jonathan. They spent a ton of time together. They went on missions together. They were like the dynamic duo of Saul's kingdom. But then Saul let envy creep in. He saw strength and potential in David, and didn't like that other people saw it too. So while David was being recognized and celebrated, Saul's envy began to grow. Because he was concerned that David was getting more attention, more fame, more popularity, had a bigger following than he did. Listen to these verses from 1 Samuel chapter 18 in the Bible. It says, when the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed Goliath, women from all towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song. Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. What's this, he said. They credit David with 10,000s and me with only thousands. Next they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand. And he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall, but David escaped him twice. That took a turn, right? Like, 1 minute, David's like the poster child of the Israelite army. Saul is like, hey, wear my armor to go into battle. David, you defeated this enemy that's been plaguing our nation for days and weeks. Oh, David, you're the best. Take a seat in my court. And then like 2 days later, Saul's like, whoop, throwing spears at him in the king's court, trying to kill the dude. Saul's jealousy was so great that he decided to cancel David once and for all with a spear. Saul's first attempt to kill David may have failed, but he was eager to try again. He's like, my aim won't be so bad next time. 1 Samuel 19, 1 through 12. Listen to this. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. It's like, I may not have good aim, but these assassins do. Let's bring him in. But Jonathan, because of his strong affection for David, remember, Jonathan and David are friends. They hang out together. They go fight battles together. Jonathan is Saul's son. And Jonathan told David what his father was planning. Hey, David, my dad is sending out an army to track you down and kill you. Just a heads up. But he goes on to say, tomorrow morning, he warned him, you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me. I'll talk to him about you. Then I'll tell you everything I can find out. The next morning, Jonathan spoke with his father about David, saying many good things about him. The king must not sin against his servant David. Jonathan said, he's never done anything to harm you. He's always helped you in any way that he could. If you've forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill the Philistine giant, and how the Lord brought a great victory to all Israel as a result, you were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man like David? There's no reason for it at all. So Jonathan, Saul's son, is trying to reason with his dad, the king. Like, just let it go, Dad. Like, David has done more for your kingdom than anybody else. And you want to kill him? It doesn't make sense. So Saul listened to Jonathan and vowed, as surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. Jonathan wins the argument, right? Afterward, Jonathan called David and told him what had happened. Then he brought David to Saul, and David served in the court as before. War broke out again after that, and David led his troops against the Philistines. He attacked them with such fury that they all ran away. But one day, when Saul was sitting at home, with spear in hand, so there's our first problem, the tormenting spirit from the Lord suddenly came upon him again. As David played his harp, Saul hurled his spear at David again, but David dodged out of the way, and leaving the spear stuck in the wall, he fled and escaped into the night. Then Saul sent troops to watch David's house. They were told to kill David when he came out the next morning. But David's wife warned him, if you don't escape tonight, you're going to be dead by morning. So she helped him climb out through a window, and he fled and escaped. So after David escaped, he ran as far from Saul as he could. And Saul was in pursuit. Like, at this point, there are several passages that lead me to believe it wasn't just Saul sending some assassins out. It wasn't just Saul sending an army after David. Like, Saul got personal. He was traveling with them. He wanted to be the one to kill David. He hunted David from city to city. His envy so great that Saul was ready to do anything in order to see David dead. But some surprising things happened during that pursuit. On several occasions, David was given a perfect window of opportunity to kill Saul. Like, David, at one point, this is funny, but Saul's like taking a dump, and David gets the perfect opportunity to like sneak up behind him and kill Saul while he's taking a dump. And David's like, I'm too good for this. And he lets Saul go. Another time, David is hiding in this cave, and Saul decides to rest in the cave for the night, and David's farther back in the cave, and he's like, I'm going to leave him alone. Like, he could have just come up, boop, like that's the end. Instead, he snuck up behind Saul, cut off a piece of his robe, went and like stood up on a hill. He's like, hey Saul, I could have killed you last night. Here's part of your robe to prove it. And he just lets him go. David and Saul finally call a truce and promise never to harm each other. They part their ways. They never see each other again. Worked out okay for David. I wish I could tell you, though, that it worked out okay for Saul. I wish I could tell you that Saul totally turned his life around, chose to love David instead of jealously hating him, but I can't. Saul stopped trying to kill David, so I guess that was a win for David, but it doesn't appear that Saul ever stopped hating him. The envy was still there. The jealousy was still there. Every time Saul heard David's name, I feel like he was still like, I hate that guy. Like, that's not a healthy way to live. Not every Bible story has a happy ending or comes with a clear lesson or practical takeaway. And in Saul's case, he didn't have a happy ending or real practical takeaway other than don't let envy get the best of you because you're going to wind up dying in battle, because that's pretty much what happened. But here's what we can do with stories like Saul's. We can reflect on his life and his choices and be better people knowing what we know about what he chose to do and how he chose to live his life. Because we can see very clearly that this lifetime of envy and jealousy towards David ended so badly, that should serve as a word of warning, as a flag of caution to us. And we better deal with envy before it gets that far. We can look to the words of Jesus, and that's what we're going to do right now. Matthew 22, verses 36 through 39. Some of Jesus' disciples and followers, they're constantly coming to him with questions. Constantly. This is one of those scenarios where somebody's asking Jesus a question, and Jesus gives a really solid response. Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? And Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. When you're not sure what to do, come back to these words from Jesus. Whether we're feeling the first hints of envy or we're so jealous we're ready to throw a spear at somebody, Jesus' words can always guide us. Love the people you envy. Love them. Don't try to kill them. Love them. So who in this story do you relate to? Are you like David? Do you feel like someone or a group of people are always out to get you because they're jealous of you? Do you feel alone, confused, like you've been canceled? Do you feel like a lot of people hold something against you and you're not really sure what it is? Maybe you're jealous. Or maybe you're just a terrible person. But we're going to go with jealous for the sake of tonight's conversation. Are you like Saul? You've probably never thrown a spear at someone. Maybe you have. Mateo's back here I have. Just keep your spears at home. Someone you really dislike because if you're honest, you're a little bit jealous of them. Is there somebody like that in your life? You really don't have any reason to hate them. They've not really done anything mean to you. They're just there. And it's frustrating. Because they're better at everything than you. They look better. They smell better. They have a more attractive boyfriend or girlfriend. You're like, oh, why do I always get stuck with the ugly chicks and they always get the hot ones? That's enough reason for me to hate them and throw a spear at them. Are you Saul? Maybe you're even jealous of somebody who's really gone out of their way to be nice to you and do things for you. You're like, it just makes me so mad that they're so nice because I just want to hate them. Have you ever been in that scenario? Yeah. I've had students tell me that before, why are you so nice to me? I don't even like you. Are Are you like both Saul and David? Chances are you have things in common with both of them. I know I do. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the run. People are out to get me for something that I don't even know what I did. And other times I'm chasing somebody down and they don't even know that they did anything to offend me. Quite frankly, they didn't do anything to offend me. They just had cooler shoes than me. No matter how you relate to David and Saul, I think we can all agree that envy destroys our relationships. Listen closely, because you can't love and let envy grow at the same time. You can't love and let envy grow at the same time. So how do we stop being envious? We're wrapping up real quick here. It starts by finding contentment, fulfillment, and peace in who God made us to be. God made you for a reason. And if you'll believe that, then when you see someone who is not you doing something that you just legitimately cannot do, you're not going to get envious. You're just going to be like, God wired us different. And there's a pretty good chance that some of the people that you envy, for reasons that they're not even aware of, are envious of you for reasons that you're not even aware of. You need to be content with who you are and what God has given to you. A lot of times poor people look at rich people with envy and they're like, man, if I just had all that money. But you know what the rich people are doing? Like, man, life would probably be a lot simpler if money wasn't an object. Do you ever find yourself wanting, obsessing over, comparing yourself to someone else? You ever find yourself wishing that you were more like this person? Looking at pictures of somebody else, being like, man, if I could just, maybe if I do my makeup this way, I'll look more like them and people will notice me. Maybe if my house looks like this, people will pay attention. Maybe if I drive this car, maybe people will finally think I'm cool. Maybe if I talk like this to my teacher like that person does, maybe that'll give me the attention that I'm looking for. Do you ever find yourself comparing yourself to other people like that? Are you envious of somebody? I mean, just think about it. Be real honest. I'm not asking for an answer. But is there somebody that you're envious of and as a result you're treating them differently? What do they have that you envy? Here's a question. Would having what they have bring you contentment? Probably not. And Jesus needs to be the source of your contentment. If you want to envy somebody, envy Jesus. Be like, man, I wish I could be as close to God as Jesus was. And then just do the things that Jesus did. And you'll get there. And you're going to find a lot of fulfillment in that. If we want to replace envy with love, this is where we have to start. With contentment in who Jesus made us to be. When our contentment is found in Jesus, it becomes so much easier to love others, including those who have things we wish we had. But getting our hearts right is only the first step in replacing envy with love. If we really want to love the people we envy, we have to do something more. I want to give you 3 ideas and then we're done. Instead of envying people who have something we want, what if we decided to celebrate them? Instead of envying people who have something that we want, what if we celebrate them? I think this is where that whole insecurity thing kind of died out in my life back a few years ago. Like the insecurities that brought me to a point of envying people. And I don't know if it was a youth ministry thing, if it was a working on houses thing, if it was just straight up God thing. But somewhere along the line, I realized rather than just being jealous that somebody can do something that I can't do, I just need to get excited about it. And that really kind of threw the door open to a healthier ministry. I mean, like back in the day, if there was somebody better at playing guitar than me, I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that that person didn't get the stage, because then it might be revealed that they were better than me, and people might like them better than me, and we just couldn't have that. I wanted to be the one playing guitar. I wanted to be the one being invited to lead music at this and this and this. I wanted to be the one to get the speaking engagements. So if I can just keep everybody else quiet so I can do my thing, then there's no chance that anybody else is going to get discovered and asked to do something. Like that's the way I operated. It hurt me, it hurt other people. If I still operated that way, I wouldn't let Jake play guitar here because he's better than me. I mean, that's just fact. Like, he is better on the guitar than I am. I can't even play mandolin. Every time I pick one up, I'm like, how do your fingers even fit on this thing? And when it comes to like working on my house, if I still felt like I had to be the very best, I wouldn't call anybody in to help me. And I'd be living in a house that's not finished. That wouldn't be any fun. Envy would have kept me from reaching out for help from people who have bigger and better skills than me. Man, when you see somebody who's really good at something and your first thought is, man, I wish I was as talented as them, tell them. Like, don't harbor it and let it turn into envy, and then you wind up hating them and throwing a spear at them. Just walk up and be like, man, I really enjoyed that song tonight. Thanks for playing. You did a really good job. Or, dude, I wish I could play basketball like you. That was so good. Man, I'm going to work harder because I've gotten to watch you play. Wow, that's a really good piece of artwork. My kid can't even recognize a stick figure when I draw it. She thinks it's a pretzel. Celebrate people instead of envying them. Number 2, instead of imitating the call-out culture of the world around us, what if we chose to call out others' greatness? Instead of nitpicking somebody that you envy and trying to find something to humble them and bring them down, what if instead we just point out the good stuff? Sometimes, maybe sometimes when you're envious of somebody, maybe that person has prompted it. Maybe they are kind of a know-it-all. Maybe they are kind of arrogant. Maybe they are kind of in your face with what they're good at. I'm not saying that never happens. But maybe, just maybe, if instead of calling them out for being an arrogant jerk or stuck on themselves and enforcing that behavior by calling it out, maybe if you were to call out the good things about them, they'd let their guard down a little bit and just be themselves instead of trying to be the jerk that has to have all the attention. Third thing, and here's one more idea. When we are the people who are being envied, instead of keeping all of our good things to ourselves, what if we decided to share what we have? So there are going to be times that people envy you. You're like, me? No way. Maybe that will happen. I mean, some of the students in here have envied me so much that they wear my sweaters to the escape. they get passed down through clothing closets and they wind up back here. And they're like, man, I just love the way Eric dressed so much. Just kidding, that did not happen, and now the sweater is never being worn again. But seriously, every now and then you're gonna discover that somebody envies you, that somebody wants what you have, that somebody is like, wow, that thing that you have, that is the best. Rather than being like, yeah, it is, be like, you want me to help you get there? Let me tell you how I got to where I am. Let me help you climb the ladder. Let me connect you with the resources to get where you want to get. That's kind of where I am in life right now. Like, I can't say that I'm successful at a ton of stuff, but I'm successful at a few things. And rather than like sitting on my throne and being like, I rule this youth ministry space, I want to give it away. I want to share my experiences and how I've come to a place of success in a few areas with other people. What can you offer to other people? It's probably something. So I'm going to pray. Jake's going to come up and lead a song. And we're going to close out the evening. And I just want you to think, is there somebody in your life that you are treating differently because you are jealous of something that they have? And I got to caution you, that's not just hurting them, it's hurting you. It's not going to do any good. So let it go. Celebrate other people. Call them out for the good, not always just for what you perceive as arrogance. And then share what you're good at with other people so people don't feel the same about you that you feel about the people that you envy the most. All right, let's stand up and sing. God, use this time of music tonight to drive home the stuff that we just talked about in the Bible. Help us to be open-handed people. Help us to have hearts for people and not hearts against people. We pray this in your name. Amen.
It doesn't make sense. no conditions when you pull me close. Oh, I won't resist it. Here is all my love. It's yours. No conditions when you pull me close. Oh, I won't resist it. Here is all my love. It's yours. No conditions when you pull me close. Oh, I won't resist it. No, I won't resist it. It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. I'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you go. To say you love us, it's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. I'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you go. To say you love us, 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 to say you love us.
Jake, I hate you. Why can you play guitar so well?
We love you, Jake.
All right, so you got about 10 minutes. You can play games, video games, hang out, whatever. Listen, cafe is open. You got to take your food and drinks outside before you eat or drink. Until the governor's mandate changes, we're going to keep masking up here out of respect for the community and our government. So grab your food. Take it with you. If you want one of the new beanies or the new hats, they're $10. You can grab one. We'll see you next week.